She sold them like scraps. Two little girls, barely four, dirty, hungry, silent, to a man she thought was homeless. But what if that man was a billionaire? And what if those girls were part of a prophecy meant to break a bloodline curse? This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a tale of resilience, of sisters torn apart by hate and stitched back together by fate, of secrets buried deep in African soil, and of revenge served cold from a private jet. You're watching Celebrity Undercover. Told the Billionaire Curse. Subscribe now, because what starts under a mango tree ends in the sky. It was barely dawn in the outskirts of Soweto. The mist still clung to the earth like a secret, and the sky held that soft shade of blue that only exists before the sun remembers to shine. Down by the edge of the Mabita Bridge, a woman in a long, faux fur coat stood with two little girls. Her sandals tapped impatiently on the cracked sidewalk, her breath fogged in the cold morning air. The girls, no older than 4, stood silently beside her. They clung to each other, dressed in mismatched clothes too thin for the weather. Their names were Amara and Anaya, twins, but not identical. Anaya had a small scar above her brow. Amara's eyes held more questions than her mouth ever asked. Neither of them cried. They had learned long ago that tears did not bring comfort or answers. "Where are we going, Mama?" Anaya whispered. The woman didn't answer, because she wasn't their mama. Her name was Ngozi, stepmother by title, stranger by heart. She gripped Anaya's hand tighter, then looked around the deserted lot. At the far end of the bridge sat a figure, wrapped in layers of old coats. A man hunched over a canvas sack. His hair was locked into long ropes, his skin hidden behind beard and dust. He looked like every storybook image of the forgotten. Ngozi marched toward him, every step punctuated by the sound of cheap heels on broken cement. "You," she hissed. He looked up, slow. His eyes were dark, but clear. Too clear for someone who supposedly had nothing. She dropped the girls in front of him like trash bags. "Take them." The man blinked. "Ma'am, don't play games with me," her voice cracked. "You said you'd take them. Well, here they are." "What are their names?" he asked calmly. Ngozi's lips curled. "Why does it matter? You're not their father." She held out her hand. Palm up, the silent demand universal. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a crumpled 10 Rand note. Ngozi snatched it like it was gold. "Do whatever you want with them." Her voice was venom. "Feed them, sell them, let the hyenas raise them." Then she turned and walked away. Never looked back. Amara looked up at the man. "Sir, are you our uncle?" He didn't answer at first. He stood slowly, taller than he looked, sitting. He knelt, placed one hand gently on each girl's shoulder. "No," he said softly. "I am your father now." Behind them, a car door clicked open. It came from a sleek black Range Rover parked just under the shade of the bridge. A driver in a suit stepped out, bowed slightly. "Mr. Okonkwo." "All is ready." The girls turned, confused. The man in rags nodded, lifted both girls into his arms like they were the most precious things on earth. He carried them to the car, set them gently on the plush leather seats. Their eyes widened, hands clutched the soft material like it might disappear. The man pulled out a phone, dialed. "It's done," he said. "Prepare their rooms. Call Dr. Thandiwe, and tell the chef no peanuts." He looked down at the girls, smiled. "They don't like peanuts." He shut the door. The car pulled away. Back under the bridge there was no trace of what had just happened, only silence and cold. But miles away in the quiet hills of Constantia, change had already begun, because these girls weren't just taken. They were chosen, and the woman who gave them away, she had no idea what she'd just done. Long before that cold morning beneath the bridge, there was laughter in the Mbalaze home, the kind that bounced off clay walls and danced through open windows. It was the sound of joy untainted by pain. Back then, Kwame Mbalaze was a craftsman, working with hands that shaped both wood and dreams. His shop in Alexandra was humble but full of life. People came from across the district just to watch him carve hope into chairs and cradle memory into headboards. He lived simply, loved deeply, especially his first wife, Chiamaka. She was laughter with legs, a bright spirit with a loud heart. She made life feel like music. When their twin girls, Amara and Anaya, were born, Kwame cried for the first time in years. He built them cribs with lions etched into the wood. Chiamaka painted their room with wildflowers. They dreamed of a future as warm as the sun that streamed through their tiny windows. But dreams are fragile things, and life doesn't always respect beauty. After the birth, Chiamaka grew weak. At first, it was exhaustion. Then it was coughing. Then silence. Kwame sat by her bed for nights that bled into days. She held his hand even when she didn't have the strength to hold her own name. One evening she whispered, "Promise me. Love them loud. Even when it's hard," he promised. She smiled, and by morning she was gone. Kwame buried his heart next to her body. He wore white, as tradition asked. But inside, everything was black. The twins were only 8 months old. They would never know the sound of their mother's laugh. The ache of absence shaped every day that followed. Family urged him to remarry. "You need help," they said. "Children need a woman's guidance." So Kwame opened his home again, this time to a woman named Ngozi. She was elegant, sharp like a blade, and kind. At first, she cooked, cleaned, held the twins with hands that trembled slightly, but smiled regardless. Kwame thought maybe he could learn to love again. He never did, but he did find comfort. Ngozi brought with her a son, Taju, from a previous relationship, a quiet boy with guarded eyes. Kwame tried to love him too, tried to build a family that fit like mismatched puzzle pieces. But Ngozi began to change. She flinched when the twins cried. She sighed when they laughed. She stopped smiling when Kwame kissed their foreheads. At night, she whispered to Taju, words too soft to be heard, but heavy enough to shift the air. Jealousy isn't always loud. Sometimes it cooks dinner and folds laundry, but it poisons just the same. Kwame started to notice the small things: spoons missing, milk always spoiled, the twins' toys tossed outside. And Ngozi? She always had an excuse. "It's the rats," she'd say. "They cry too much. They don't respect me." Kwame wanted peace, so he stayed silent. But silence does not save. It only delays the storm, and the clouds were already gathering. The day Chiamaka died, the wind had smelled of rain. The sky hung heavy over the township, like it too was holding its breath. Ngozi had cooked that evening. For the first time since joining the household, she insisted on preparing the meal alone. She waved off Kwame's offer to help. "It's just stew," she said, smiling faintly. But there was something about her smile that didn't touch her eyes. The twins were asleep in the next room. The scent of pepper soup filled the house, mingling with the dusty air. Kwame remembered walking past the kitchen. He saw her humming to herself, a pot simmering, steam rising, and something about that moment stayed with him. Too quiet, too calm. They ate dinner together. Ngozi served them, carefully, too carefully. She waited until Kwame had taken a bite before picking up her own spoon. Chiamaka ate slowly. She smiled at Kwame. "You're too quiet tonight," she whispered. Kwame smiled back. "I'm just tired." But something gnawed at him, an itch beneath the skin of the moment. Later that night, Chiamaka coughed, then again, and again. She clutched her stomach, eyes wide with panic. Kwame rushed to her side. She tried to speak, but only foam came out. She collapsed. In his arms, he screamed for help. The neighbors came running. Someone called an ambulance, but by the time they arrived, Chiamaka was gone. Just like that. Gone. The official cause? Cardiac arrest. But Kwame knew his wife. She was tired, yes, but she wasn't sick. And that night, after the dust settled, after the twins cried themselves to sleep, he sat at the dining table staring at the bowl she'd eaten from. Ngozi came to mind. His side placed a hand on his shoulder. "Such a shame," she said. She was too gentle for this world. Kwame said nothing. His hands were fists on his lap. From that day on, the house was quieter. Heavily so. The twins sensed it. They stopped laughing as loudly, started clinging to each other more. Ngozi began to take more control. She dressed the girls in second-hand clothes, kept them outside for hours, and when Kwame traveled for work, she would lock the bedroom door and leave them to sleep on mats in the hallway. The neighbors began to whisper. They'd seen bruises, heard screams, but without proof. Their words fell like raindrops on stone. Kwame wanted to believe he had done right by remarrying, that he had given the twins another mother, but he felt the truth creeping in like mold beneath fresh paint. Taju grew more distant, more guarded. He never smiled anymore. One day, he stood in the hallway, watching as Ngozi scolded Anaya for spilling porridge. The slap was fast, sharp. Anaya didn't cry, but Taju flinched, and Kwame, watching from the doorway, felt something inside him begin to crack. That evening, he asked Ngozi, "Are you happy here?" She looked up from the ironing board. "Why wouldn't I be? Because you seem angry." She set down the iron slowly. "They're not mine, Kwame." "They'll never be mine." Kwame nodded slowly. He didn't argue, didn't defend the girls, didn't realize that silence once again was not safety, but surrender, and when work called him to Cape Town the following week, he packed his bag, kissed the twins goodbye, and told Ngozi, "Take care of them like they were yours." Ngozi smiled. "Thin cold, I will." She meant it, just not in the way he thought. It was a Thursday, one of those mornings where the sky can't decide if it wants to rain or shine, the kind that tricks you into thinking the day will be normal. Ngozi woke up before the twins, not to prepare breakfast, not to braid their hair, but to dress them in silence. She pulled Amara's sweater over her head, tugged Anaya's sandals onto her feet. The girls didn't speak. They'd grown used to reading moods like weather. And that morning, the clouds around Ngozi felt darker than usual. She told them they were going to see someone special. Amara asked, "Daddy's friend?" Ngozi didn't reply, just tightened the scarf around her head and motioned them to follow. They walked through alleyways still wet with dew, past women setting up fruit stalls, past a man sweeping broken glass from a doorstep. No one stopped her. No. One asked where she was going. She reached the edge of the Mabita Bridge, where the pavement cracked like old skin. There, waiting, sat a man wrapped in patched jackets and time. He didn't rise, didn't speak, just looked at her. She looked back. "I brought them," she said flatly. "You said you'd take them." The man nodded once. Slow, deliberate. He looked at the twins, then back at Ngozi. "Why?" he asked, her jaw clenched. "They're not mine." He studied her, eyes soft but firm. "They're not trash either." She pulled out a torn envelope. Inside, crumpled bills. "Take this for their food or whatever." He didn't take it. She threw it onto his lap anyway. "Don't come looking for me." Then just like that, she turned and walked away. Her steps echoed off concrete. Anaya looked up. "At the man! Where's Daddy?" Amara held her sister's hand tightly. The man stood up. Dust fell from his coat like forgotten history. He didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a handkerchief, wiped Anaya's nose gently. "You don't need to be afraid anymore." He motioned toward a car parked under a nearby tree. It wasn't flashy, just clean, silent. A woman stepped out, tall, wearing white. "Dr. Thandiwe," the man said, nodding. "She'll make sure you're okay." Amara blinked. Her voice small. "You know our names?" He smiled. "I know more than that." He took their hands, led them to the car. The engine hummed like a lullaby. As they drove off, neither girl looked back. Back at the bridge, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of rain and endings. Hours later, Ngozi returned home. She fixed her face before knocking over a stool, then screamed, loud, panicked. "Help! Someone help! Neighbors ran, she cried. "The girl, they're gone. I left to buy bread. When I came back, they've vanished." One neighbor frowned. "They were just here last night." Another shook her head. "That woman never loved those children," but no one said it aloud, not to her face. They searched the streets, called the names. Amara, Anaya, no answer. No trace. By dusk, the search had turned into murmurs. By night, murmurs into suspicion. And far away, in a house filled with warm lights and quiet music, the twins were bathed, fed, and tucked into soft beds. For the first time in their lives, they slept without fear, and the man who watched them from the hallway whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." The car rolled through the outskirts of Soweto like a shadow with purpose. Its tires barely whispered against the pavement. Inside, the air was soft, scented faintly with lavender and old leather. Amara sat closest to the window. Her fingers traced shapes onto the glass. Anaya sat quietly beside her, their small hands still linked. The man beside them watched in silence, not with pity, but with something deeper. Recognition. "I know this must feel strange," he said finally. His voice was calm, weighted. "I'm not here to scare you." Amara turned, her eyes full of questions. "Where are we going?" He smiled gently. "To a place where no one will ever hurt you again." The girls didn't respond, but something in their posture shifted. Not trust, but curiosity. The car turned off the main road, into a long driveway, lined with jacaranda trees. Purple petals blanketed the ground like velvet. Ahead stood a house unlike anything they'd ever seen. It wasn't just big. It was beautiful. Bright windows, white columns, a porch swing that moved in the breeze as if welcoming them. The car stopped. The driver stepped out, opened the door slowly. The girls hesitated. Then the man stepped out too, held out both hands. They took them, together. They walked toward the house. Inside, the air felt warm, like bread fresh from the oven. A woman approached from the hallway. She wore a nurse's badge. "Hello, little ones," she said softly. "I'm Nurse Busy. Let's get you settled." Anaya clutched Amara's arm. The man knelt beside them. "You're safe here," he said. "This is your home now." He paused. "My name is Obina, but you can call me Papa Obi." The girls stared at him. Then slowly Amara whispered, "Okay." Nurse Busy led them away gently. Up a staircase, past framed photos, happy children, laughter caught in still images. Obina watched them go. His hand gripped the railing tightly. Behind him, a voice spoke. "They look just like your daughters." It was Dr. Thandiwe. She stood with a tablet in hand. Obina didn't turn. "I know," he said. Thandiwe stepped closer. "Are you sure about this?" He nodded. "They need someone, and I need purpose." She looked down at her tablet. "They're underweight, mildly anemic, but otherwise healthy. They've been through hell." Obina exhaled slowly. "Then we start today." He turned. "Give them new clothes, toys, fresh sheets. Let them choose their room colors. Let them feel like they matter." Thandiwe smiled. "Yes, Mr. Okonkwo." He waved a hand. "No more Mr. Okonkwo, just Papa Obi." She nodded. As she walked away, Obina pulled out his phone, opened a video feed. On the screen, a hidden camera played back footage from earlier that day. Gozi's face, her voice, her coldness. Every word recorded. He watched in silence, then deleted the clip. He didn't need to keep proof. He had the only proof that mattered. 2 girls upstairs, alive, safe, and finally, home. Gozi returned home like a woman on the edge of collapse. She slammed the gate shut behind her, ripped her scarf from her head, and collapsed onto the front steps, wailing, loud, convincing. She screamed the twins' names. Neighbors ran over, confused and alarmed. "What happened?" someone asked, and Gozi clutched her chest. I left to buy bread. They were gone when I came back." Her voice broke at all the right moments. She even forced out a few tears. But the neighborhood didn't forget so easily. Old Mama Folak stood at the edge of the gate. She folded her arms, her eyes narrow. "You never liked those girls," she said. Ngozi spun. "Excuse me? You beat them, locked them out. I've seen it with my own eyes." Ngozi's lips trembled. She turned to another woman. "Tell her, that's not true, right?" But the other woman looked away. The crowd grew quiet, the silence louder than any denial. That evening Kwame returned, dust on his boots, weariness in his eyes. But something was wrong. The moment he entered the compound, he felt it. Too quiet. No giggles. No tiny feet rushing into his arms. He dropped his bag. "Where are the girls?" Ngozi burst into another round of cries. "They're gone. I went to the market, and when I came back, they were just gone." Kwame stood frozen, his world tilting. He stumbled into the house, called their names. No response. Their shoes were still by the door, their tiny coats still on the hook, but the girls were nowhere. He returned to the yard. Ngozi was still crying, still dramatic. He stared at her, really stared, and something inside him whispered, "She knows." He didn't confront her. Not that night. Instead, he sat beneath the tree in their backyard, the same tree where Amara once built a pretend kitchen with sticks, the same spot where Anaya napped in his arms. The wind rustled. His heart cracked. Memories swirled like dust. The next morning, he filed a report at the local police station, gave every detail, but the officer sighed. No ransom note, no witness, no camera footage, and no urgency. In other words, no help. Days passed, then a week. Posters were printed. Volunteers searched. Even the news covered it briefly. Missing twins, suspected abduction. But the trail went cold. Ngozi played the grieving guardian well. She lit candles, held. Prayer vigils, cried during interviews. But alone in her room, she stared at her reflection, saw the lines deepen around her mouth, the shadows under her eyes. She couldn't sleep, not because of guilt, but because of the envelope. It arrived 5 days. After the twins vanished, no return address, just her name. Inside, a photo. Amara and Anaya clean happy, wearing new dresses, standing in front of a mansion. On the back, a single sentence. "You gave them away, we gave them wings." Her hands shook, her stomach turned. She looked over her shoulder, suddenly afraid of shadows, suddenly unsure of who was watching. That night she double-locked her doors, closed her curtains tight, and for the first time in her life, Ngozi feared what she could not control. Because somewhere out there, someone knew, and they weren't finished. The mansion in Constantia sat on the edge of a hill. From the girls' window, they could see the ocean. Endless, blue, calm. Anaya pressed her forehead to the glass. "Is it always like this?" she asked softly. Amara shook her head. "I don't know." Behind them, Nurse Busy opened the wardrobe. "Pick any dress you like," she said. The twins turned slowly. Rows of color met them. Pinks, purples, yellows bright like sun. They reached for the same one. Laughed, really laughed. It startled. Then what that night? They had their first bath in warm water. Scented bubbles floated in the air. Obina sat outside their door listening. Every giggle was music, every splash, a kind of healing. He had their names carved on wooden plaques above their beds. Anaya's had butterflies. Amara's had stars. He called in Dr. Thandiwi for a full checkup. She was gentle, patient. "Do you know where you are?" she asked. Anaya nodded. "In a big house." "Do you know who brought you here?" Amara looked down. "Papa Obi," Dr. Thandiwi smiled. "That's right, and do you feel safe?" Both girls nodded. Small, but sure. Later that week, Obina introduced them to a golden retriever named Mango. The girls squealed. Amara chased. Mango across the garden. Anaya drew him on paper with crayon. Their laughter returned. Their shoulders relaxed. But they never asked about Ngozi or their father. Not yet. Obina didn't push. He read to them each night. Stories of brave queens, of magic, lands, of stars that whispered secrets to kind children. He learned what made them smile, what made them cry, what songs they hummed in their sleep. One day, Anaya asked him, "Why us?" He paused, kneeling down. "Because when I saw you, I saw my daughters again." He opened his wallet, pulled out an old photo. 2 girls, one with dimples, one with curly hair just like Amara. They were taken from me a long time ago. The girls looked at the photo. "Are they gone?" Amara asked. Obina nodded. "In a car accident many years ago." Silence sat between them. Then Anaya said, "Maybe we were meant to find each other." He smiled, tears in his eyes. Maybe we were. That night the twins asked if they could call him Papa for real. He couldn't speak, just nodded, and from that moment on, they weren't lost girls. They were home. They were loved, and they had names that meant something again. 3 weeks after their escape, Amara found a strange envelope under the mansion gate. It was unmarked. No address, no stamp, only their names written in delicate cursive. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling. Inside, a single photo. 2 little girls standing outside a crumbling compound, their eyes wide, their clothes torn. On the back, a message, "Do you remember who you were before they renamed you?" Anaya stood beside her, silent, then took the photo. "I remember the cold floor," she said softly. "I remember the hunger." Beneath the photo was a second sheet, typed, crisp, precise, coordinates, a name, Ngozi, and one line in bold, "She holds the truth." They showed the letter to Andrew. He studied it, brows furrowed. "This handwriting, I've seen it before." Zara checked the coordinates. "It's a rural village in Ogun State." Obina volunteered to go with them, just in case. They drove at dawn. The road twisted through palm groves and farmland. Villagers stared, children waved. But the air felt heavy. They reached a tiny compound built of mud bricks, and there she was. Ngozi, gray, hair wrapped in indigo cloth, eyes that had seen too much. She didn't ask who they were. She opened her door and said, "Come. The truth won't wait." Kwame came home earlier than planned. His hands were rough from travel. His back ached, but it was his heart that carried the heaviest weight. He expected laughter, the patter of small feet. Instead, he met silence. Ngozi was in the kitchen, slicing plantains. She didn't look up when he entered. "Where are the girls?" he asked. His voice was quiet, too quiet. Ngozi didn't flinch, didn't pause. "They vanished," she said simply. Kwame stared. "What do you mean?" She set the knife down, wiped her hands on a towel. "I went to the shop. When I returned, gone." He walked forward, slow, deliberate. "And you didn't call me?" I panicked. Her eyes flicked to the window. I screamed. "Neighbors came. We searched." "But no one saw anything?" She shook her head. Kwame's breath caught. He sat down, took off his cap, pressed it to his chest. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, "I want the truth." Ngozi turned sharply. "You think I did something?" "I don't know what to think." She stepped closer. "They weren't mine." She said it softly, like it explained everything. "They weren't mine, Kwame, and they never would be." He looked up, his eyes tired. "And so what? You gave them away?" She said nothing, but her silence was an answer. Upstairs, Taju listened. From the stairwell, his face unreadable. Kwame stood, walked to the sink, stared out the window. "The day Chiamaka died, I suspected you." Ngozi gasped. "Don't you dare." He turned. His voice was calm. "I didn't say anything because I wanted peace." He stepped forward. "But peace built on silence is just a pause before the storm." She backed away. "Are you threatening me?" "No," he said. "I'm remembering." She reached for the towel again, hands shaking. Kwame walked past her, picked up a photo frame from the shelf. The twins, smiling. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "I failed them." Ngozi didn't reply. Couldn't. She turned away, but her reflection in the glass door showed everything. Guilt, fear. Taju crept back upstairs, closed his door slowly. Inside, he opened his drawer, pulled out the photo Ngozi had hidden, the one she thought was safe. He turned it over, read the words again. You gave them away. We gave them wings. And suddenly the house didn't feel like home anymore. The call came late at night. Obina had just tucked the girls in. They'd fallen asleep to the sound of rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance. He picked up his phone. Papa Obi, said Dr. Thandiwe. There's a situation. He sat up straight. What happened? It's Ngozi. A pause. She was hit by a delivery truck. Head trauma, internal bleeding. Silence. She's in critical condition. Needs surgery within hours. Obina rubbed his forehead. And? She has no one willing to help. A longer pause. She needs 150,000 rand. Obina exhaled. Deep. Heavy. I'll talk to the girls. The next morning, Amara sat at the breakfast table, sipping orange juice. Anaya played with her toast. Obina stood before them. There's something you need to know, he began. He explained slowly, softly, every word chosen with care. When he finished, the room was quiet. Amara spoke first. She tried to ruin us. Obina nodded. Yes, but she's broken now, and alone. Anaya's voice cracked. Why should we help her? Because mercy isn't about who deserves it, he said. It's about who we choose to be. The girls looked at each other, their faces so young, yet filled with old grief. Later that afternoon, they sat in Obina's office. The transfer was made. Thandiwe called back within the hour. Surgery's successful, she's stable. The girls didn't smile, didn't cry. They just sat. Still. We don't want to see her, Amara said. Not now. Maybe not ever. Obina understood. He respected. You don't owe her your presence, he said. Only your peace. That night, Anaya slipped a note under Obina's door. It read, She took everything, but we still have each other. Maybe that's enough. Obina folded the note, kept it in his wallet, right next to the photo of his daughters, because in the end, love given freely is the strongest kind of power. And mercy, even when undeserved, is a kind of healing that leaves no scars. The sun had barely risen when Taju opened the old wooden box beneath Ngozi's bed. It was carved with faded initials. Inside were letters, photographs, and a folder bound in red string. He untied it carefully. His fingers trembled. Inside, land. Deeds, bank statements, a birth certificate, but not his, Kwame's, and not just any copy. One that connected him to Chief Godfrey Mbalaze, his father, a name spoken in hushed tones back in Ghana, a legacy hidden for decades. Taju's breath caught. He flipped another page, a handwritten note from Ngozi. To protect what is yours, you must destroy what threatens it. He stared at the words, his hands balled into fists. He understood now. The twins weren't just an inconvenience. They were a threat to everything his mother hoped he would inherit. Downstairs, Ngozi lay in bed, recovering. The nurses said her healing was slow but steady. She barely spoke. But that morning when Taju stood in the doorway holding the documents, she looked up. Her lips moved faintly. Burn them. Taju didn't respond. He turned and walked away. Outside the mansion gates, he found a public phone, dialed a number from memory. A man answered. Taju's voice was low. It's time. The reply came just as cold. Understood. Back at the estate, Obina received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo of the twins and a single sentence scrawled in red ink. Blood remembers. He folded the photo carefully, placed it on his desk, then checked the security cameras. All systems were fine, but his gut said otherwise. Later that evening, Anaya found a note slipped into her school bag. It wasn't addressed, but she knew. You were chosen, not born. Don't forget that. She handed it to Obina. He read it twice, then called the security team. I want eyes on the perimeter 24/7. The girls sensed the tension. Amara asked quietly, "Is she coming back?" Obina knelt. "No, but someone else might be." Anaya looked out the window. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that feels like a warning, and deep inside the estate, something had shifted. The past wasn't done. It was just getting started. The wind howled louder that night. A storm was coming. But inside the estate, it wasn't the weather that stirred the air. It was fear. Obina paced the study, security footage on loop, every angle of the perimeter. Guards rotated every hour. Still, he felt it, that something wasn't right. Down the hallway, Amara and Anaya lay awake, eyes wide in the dark. The letter hadn't left their minds. Chosen, not born. What did it mean? Who would say that? Why now? Obina entered the room softly, sat. On the edge of the bed, trouble is like smoke, he said quietly. You smell it before you see the fire. The girls nodded. They understood. Obina leaned in. I need you both to be brave. Can you do that for me? Amara whispered. Yes, Papa. He kissed their foreheads. Good, because tomorrow everything changes. The next day, a black van parked across the estate gates. A man inside snapped photos. He wore dark glasses, gloved hands. 2 more men joined him. They whispered, watched, waited. Taju stood at a rooftop downtown, phone to ear, looking at a map of the estate. Go in when the lights drop. Do not harm the girls, the voice on the other end growled. And the man, a pause. Do what you must. That night at 2:03 a.m., the cameras flickered. One blinked off, then another. Obina sat up straight, grabbed his phone. Activate lockdown protocol, now. Steel shutters dropped over the windows. Alarms buzzed softly. The estate became a fortress. Outside, the black van revved. 3 masked figures ran toward the gate. One scaled the wall. Another cut through the side fence. But they weren't fast enough. First fell to a taser hit. The second was tackled by a guard dog. The third made it inside. He reached the hallway, made it to the twins' room, but stopped. The girls weren't there. Instead, he was met by a red dot on his chest. Obina stood at the door, gun lowered but steady. I know who sent you, he said, and I know why. The man said nothing, just stared, then lunged. But Obina was faster. A flash, a shot to the shoulder. The man crumpled. Sirens filled the night. Police arrived within minutes. By sunrise, 3 men were in custody, and one truth was clear, the bloodline. War had begun. Obina called the twins into the study. He looked tired, older but not broken. You need to know the full story, he said, about your father, about the inheritance, and about what your stepbrother believes he's owed. He placed the documents on the table. They read every page, in silence. When they were done, Amara said, So he's coming again? Obina nodded. He won't stop until he has what he thinks is his. Anaya looked up. Then we can't hide. No, said Obina. You lead. He slid them 2 envelopes, each with a name, each with a legacy. Go claim what was stolen from you. The screen fades to black. A single line appears. To be continued. 2 weeks later, the girls stood at the gates of the Mbalaze ancestral compound. It rose from the hills of Kumasi like a sleeping giant. Old stone, cracked statues, and silence that carried weight. They wore matching navy dresses, hair pulled back, eyes. Sharp Obina stood behind them, suit-pressed expression unreadable. You ready? He asked. Amara nodded. Anaya took a deep breath. Yes. They stepped through the gate. Inside, elders were waiting. Men with silver hair and judging eyes. A woman in gold robes raised her hand. Who brings claim? Obina stepped forward. I do. He passed a leather-bound folder. Birth records. Family. Tree. The will of Chief Godfrey. Gasps followed. Murmurs swelled. One man stood. This is forged. No, said Obina. Validated by 3 different authorities. He pointed to the girls. They are his blood. The true heirs. The woman in gold turned to them. Speak. Amara stepped forward, voice steady. We are not here for revenge. We are here for our name, our truth, Anaya added, and for every child who was told they don't belong. Silence fell, then applause, slow, then louder. A gavel was struck. It is recognized. They are Mbalaze. Later in the courtyard, Obina hugged them both. I'm proud of you. You stood tall in the land that tried to forget you. Back in the city, Taju watched the news. Twins reclaim lost legacy and historic ruling. His fist hit the wall. He grabbed his bag, dialed a number. Phase 2, we move now. In the darkness behind him, a figure in shadows replied, yes. Let the bloodline truly bleed. The mansion no longer felt like home. Guards doubled their patrol. Gates were reinforced. Locks changed, but unease remained. Inside, Amara trained in self-defense with a retired policewoman. Anaya took up coding lessons, learning how to trace digital footprints. We won't be victims again, Amara had said. Obina agreed, but he also knew. This war was deeper than knives or firewalls. This was about legacy, about memory, about truth. One evening, Obina gathered the girls. He lit a single candle, held up an old leather journal. This belonged to your grandfather. They leaned in. The Mbalaze bloodline is older than titles and land. It is power. It is pain. He opened to a page marked with a crimson thread. There, scrawled in ink, was a prophecy. When the true heirs rise, shadow shall strike from within. Amara frowned. From within? Obina looked up. It means betrayal will come from someone. Close, Anaya whispered. Taju, Obina nodded once. But he's not alone. Meanwhile, in a rundown motel across the border, Taju met with a tall man in a black coat. You failed the first time, the man said. Taju clenched his jaw. This time, we hit harder. He slid a folder across the table. Blueprints. Guard. Rotation. Their next public appearance. The man grinned. No witnesses. Back at the estate, Amara tossed in bed. Dreams haunted her. A figure in smoke, hands reaching. A whisper. You have what should have been mine. She woke in a sweat, ran to Anaya's room. I think it's coming, she said. Anaya was already awake. I know. I felt it too. At dawn, Obina received a call. The girls had been invited to speak at a global education forum in Cape Town. Security would be tight. But Obina hesitated. This feels wrong, he said, but Amara stepped forward. We have to go. If we run, we give them the legacy. Anaya added, this time we speak with the world watching. Obina sighed, then nodded. Prepare the jet. Outside, clouds gathered on the horizon, and somewhere in the dark, a blade was sharpened, a trigger checked, a message sent. The shadows were moving, and the next strike would not miss. Cape Town shimmered under a bold African sun. White tents flapped gently at the International Forum grounds. Flags from every nation fluttered in the sea breeze. Inside the main tent, 1,000 chairs faced the grand stage, and among the names on Abaozi, the guest list, were Amara and Anaya Mbalaze. Their story had traveled far, from tragedy to triumph, and now the world was listening. As they arrived, cameras flashed, journalists pushed forward, security tightened around them. Obina walked beside them, always alert. This is more than a speech, he murmured. This is a declaration. Amara wore white, Anaya deep blue, symbols of unity, of peace. But behind the beauty, danger lurked. In a van 2 blocks away, Taju watched through binoculars. The black coat man beside him loaded a pistol. Too many eyes, Taju said. The man grinned. Then, we blind them. At 10:42 a.m., Amara stepped onto the stage. Anaya stood behind her. The crowd hushed. She began to speak. My name is Amara Mbalaze. But the microphone cracked, then went dead. At the same moment, smoke erupted near the side. Entrance, screams, panic. Obina rushed forward. Shielding the girls, guards surrounded them. Taju's men moved in from the west gate, but something was wrong. Another group, unmarked men, intercepted them. Gunshots echoed. Chaos exploded. Civilians dropped. Guards fired back. Taju cursed. This wasn't the plan, the black coat man laughed. Plans are for cowards. In the confusion, Amara and Anaya were rushed into a black car. But once inside, the driver turned. It wasn't one of theirs. He pulled a knife. Amara kicked. Anaya screamed. Obina sprinted behind the vehicle, fired one shot. The tire burst. The car swerved, crashed into a barrier. The girls crawled out, shaken, blood on Anaya's cheek. Obina helped them up. Sirens wailed. Reinforcements arrived. Taju fled, but not fast enough. The black coat man vanished. 3 of his men were captured, and by 2 p.m., the forum grounds were shut down. News stations reported it as a terror attempt. But inside the recovery tent, Obina leaned over Anaya. This was only the beginning. Amara gripped his arm. Then let's end it our way. By midnight, the compound was silent again, but no one slept. Obina stood at his desk, phone in hand, tapping, scrolling, then stopping. There's something bigger, he said softly. Amara and Anaya leaned over the screen. He had decrypted part of a seized hard drive from one of Taju's men. Lines of code, coordinates, transaction logs. But one file stood out, titled, Inheritance Clean List PDF. Anaya opened it. Rows of names, dates, some crossed out in red. Amara whispered, What is this? Obina's eyes narrowed. Targets. People tied to the Mbalaze bloodline or its wealth. Or maybe people who know too much. They scrolled. One name stopped them cold. Ngozi. Amara swallowed. She's already gone. Obina shook his head. No, not gone. Not yet. She's in hiding. A safe house in Benin. Amara sat back, so they're tying up loose ends. Anaya's voice cracked. Who's funding this? That's when Obina showed them the last page, bank transfers from a shell company in Zurich, but traced to a name they never expected, Minister Lufuno. Anaya gasped. But he's family, our uncle. Amara clenched her jaw. He always said legacy demands sacrifice. Obina spoke low. It's time we flip the game. We don't wait to be hunted. We strike first. At dawn they packed, traveled. Light. Obina called an old friend in Interpol. Activate Black Sun Protocol. The friend hesitated. You sure? Obina looked at the twins. Yes. Back in Zurich, Minister Lufuno sat in his private study, sipped rare whiskey, watched the markets rise. He didn't know. That war was coming, and this time it wore heels and braided crowns. The plane touched down in Cotonou just after dusk. Warm winds brushed their cheeks as they stepped onto the tarmac. Benin smelled of salt, spice, and secrets. Obina didn't wait. We have 3 hours. A jeep met them at the edge of the airport, driven by a young woman in fatigues. Call me Zara, she said. Interpol sent me. Her accent was clipped, Nigerian with a French lilt. They sped through narrow roads. Villages turned to forest, then a lone bungalow, hidden behind banana trees. Zara killed the lights. This is it. Obina stepped out first. Hand on his weapon, he knocked 3 times, then once more. A lock turned, the door creaked open. Ngozi appeared, older, thinner, but her eyes still sharp. You brought them, she whispered. Anaya stepped forward. Why did they want you dead? Ngozi gestured inside. Because I know what the Mbalaze name really means. Inside, she showed them a chest, old papers, photos. One photo stopped Amara cold. A baby, 2 women, and Lufuno, smiling. That baby was me, Ngozi said. Your mother's twin. Anaya froze. You're our aunt? Ngozi nodded, but hidden, because of a prophecy. Obina leaned in. What prophecy? Ngozi pulled out a faded scroll. When the daughters of twin bloodlines unite, kings shall fall. They feared us. They divided us. But you are the key. Suddenly, a window shattered, a bullet lodged in the wall. Zara tackled Ngozi. Obina fired back. Ambush! More shots. yelling in the distance. "They found us," Anaya cried. Amara grabbed the scroll. "We move!" They ran into the bush. Zara guided them fast, through tall grass to a dry riverbed. A second vehicle waited. "They cut the signal," Zara said. Obina cursed. This was never just about inheritance. Amara clutched the scroll. "It's about destiny." They didn't stop driving until the sun rose. Dew clung to the windshield. Birds called out in the distance. But no one in the vehicle spoke. Not until they reached a cliffside camp. Obina jumped out first, scanned the perimeter, then nodded. "We're clear." Amara clutched the scroll, the prophecy etched in her mind. Twin bloodlines, unity, fall of kings. She turned to Ngozi. "Who else knows this?" Ngozi shook her head. "No one who'd speak." "They've all been silenced." Zara checked her weapon. Then, "We speak louder." Obina knelt beside a map, laid out the safe zones, marked the red zones: Benin, Nigeria, Zurich. "Lufuno's reach is long, but we know his game now." Amara touched the map. Her finger rested on one name. Bakassi. Anaya frowned. "That's where it began." Ngozi nodded. "And that's where it must end." Obina pulled up satellite images. "There's a hidden estate, secluded, guarded. It's where Lufuno disappears when things get tight." Amara looked at Anaya. "Are we ready?" Anaya didn't hesitate. "We were born for this. They trained for days. Zara led combat drills. Ngozi taught them the old stories. The twin line traced back generations. 2 sisters, 1 crown, always one. Betrayed. Until now. Until Amara and Anaya, the ones who would not break." One night Amara stood by the fire. Obina joined her. "You still doubt?" She shook her head. "No, just grieving the silence before the storm." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's make it thunder." Morning came cloaked in silence, not peace. Just the calm before. Amara zipped her boots. Anaya loaded the gear. Ngozi kissed their foreheads. "My time ends here," she whispered. Obina nodded with respect. "You've brought us far enough." Zara revved the engine. Their convoy moved out. 3 vehicles, dust trailing behind like memory. The road to Bakassi was broken. Literal, metaphorical, a history of betrayal written in potholes and blood, checkpoint after checkpoint. But Zara knew the bribes, the handshakes, the names to drop. By sundown, they reached the edge of the forest. Obina pointed to a hill. Lufuno's compound lies beyond that ridge. Satellite intel confirmed it. High walls, motion sensors. And something strange, a private chapel built underground. "That's where he keeps the records," Zara guessed. Anaya pulled the scroll from her jacket. "The prophecy ends tonight." They waited for midnight, when the shadows grew bold, and silence covered sin. Amara whispered to Anaya, "If we don't come back, we come back." Her sister cut in, with steel in her voice. Obina cut the fence. They slipped in, ghosts in, black, every step a heartbeat. They reached the chapel. Anaya slid the door open. Below, candles, statues, and Lufuno, kneeling before an altar, muttering a prayer in an old dialect. He turned, saw them, didn't flinch. "You fulfilled the scroll," said calmly. "Twin bloodlines, united, you brought the curse." Amara stepped forward. "We brought justice." Lufuno smiled, then let history judge. He reached behind the altar, pulled a hidden blade, but Obina fired first. The sound was final. Lufuno slumped, and the altar cracked, revealing files, names, photos, everything. Proof of the bloodline purge, and a backup drive. Anaya picked it up. "This ends now." They burned the chapel, watched the flames eat secrets. By dawn, they were gone. Heading back, not as orphans, not as fugitives, but as daughters of destiny. The ones who refused to be erased. The prophecy fulfilled, not by blood but by courage. Back in Lagos, the city buzzed, but in their hearts it was quiet. Amara stood beneath the mango tree, the same one they cried under as children. Now older, wiser, free. The mansion gates opened. Girls in sky blue uniforms spilled into the courtyard. Amanda. Academy Gay Dream once whispered. Now alive, Anaya adjusted a young student's collar. Chin up, little one, she smiled. You come from a line of fire. Andrew walked out with a cane, pride shining in his eyes. Obina beside him holding the new security plans. Zara in charge of protection. Gozi now teaching history. They built something lasting. Not from vengeance, but vision. Inside, framed on the hay wall, a photo. 2 girls in tattered clothes, beside a man in dreadlocks, a reminder of how far they came. That evening, Amara stood by the sea, wind dancing through her hair. Anaya joined her. No more running, she said, only flying. Their plane awaited, wings painted with 2 phoenixes, their call signs, Flame 1 and Flame 2. They rose into the sky, not escaping, but ascending. A voiceover closed the story. They were sold for nothing, but became worth everything. Not because they were chosen, but because they chose. Fade to black. Then words appear for every child abandoned, for every woman silenced. May your fire never dim. It began with a sail and ended with a school. 2 girls thrown away like garbage, now fly planes across continents. They didn't just escape. They reclaimed. A name, a history, a destiny. You cried. You gasped. You hoped. Now take that hope and share it. Because somewhere, a girl like Amara is still waiting for someone to see her, to save her, to believe in her. Let her know she can choose too. This was The Billionaire Curse, a story of pain, power, and choosing flame over fear. Like, comment, share, and never forget. They were sold for nothing but became worth everything.